This is Pacific Rails, Inc. Pacific Rails, Inc. is a worker placement game in which players are trying to build the transcontinental railroad across the United States of America. Wait a second. Just for reference here, United States of America, United States of America. All right, we're looking good. We got the 5 Great Lakes across the width of the country. Here's the mountains in the heartland of the flatlands of Kansas and Indiana. We're good, folks. This is a worker placement game. This is the grid in which players are going to be placing their workers on their turn. These are some bonus actions, and then this is where the rail tracks are going to go with the attempt to connect one side to the other. Each player has their own train, a set of houses which will produce more resources as they get built out, telephone pole stations, and then rail stations or houses. They're called multiple things in the rulebook. At the start of the game, players will put a worker out onto a space, and in the future they can determine whether they want to put another worker out to take a turn or to withdraw a worker. Whether you place or withdraw a worker, you activate one of the actions adjacent to your worker, finish it, and then the other player will go. When it comes back to you, if you take an action again, in this case gathering coins, then you will also, per the rulebook, multiply the action for additional workers that you have adjacent to that action. So the corner spaces allow you to gather the 4 resources in the game: coins, iron, wood, and powder kegs. They each have individual bonus actions as well that you can complete and multiply, spending coins to throw telephone stations out onto the map, and spending powder kegs to get upgrades for your train, things like that. Now, these 4 spaces in the cardinal directions activate these specialists. The specialists will allow you to do things like turn your resources into the different types of rails: tunnels, bridges, or prairie lands. They all kind of look the same. Players who have these will have to store them in their cargo hold up here above their train, and that's also where they're going to be storing their resources. You're limited to 6 things that you can hold, resources, or hold train tracks and tunnels in your train until you upgrade. How do you upgrade your train? Well, eventually what you'll do is you'll take the lay track action. If you have track in front of you, you can lay it out onto the board in a way that allows you to connect to a city. You'll move your train over to that city. You'll score points for the number of newly laid track that you have out here, and then you can build one of your buildings. So if you build one of these houses over here and move your train, you now can produce more of the resource shown underneath that, in this case, coins. Eventually, players will continue to do this. Players can lay down multiple types of tracks so that they can try and get to cities. The longer connections you make, the more points you score. You can build off of other players' previously built places. You can earn some bonuses here and there. There's a few other things that will happen. This center action space also allows you to hire these specialists. Where they go is in these upgraded sections of your train. When you build your first, second, and third buildings onto the board, you'll get additional train cars that will allow you to hold specialists and to hold these upgrades. And so in the future, when you take, let's throw some specialists out onto our trains. In the future, when you take these 4 cardinal direction actions, you'll be able to activate not only the action shown on here, but also any specialist in your train car. This one up here, this specialist allows you to trade in coins to activate the Senate, your lobbying Congress, which allows you to, per a single coin, move down a hat and take whatever the bonus is. For double coins, you can do these ones, and for 3 coins. At some point in the game, you'll be able to, instead of wanting to take one of these actions, you can spend the coin to reset and grab the number of victory points shown here on the top, in this case, 4 victory points for doing that action. So that's pretty much the game, and you'll just continue. The first player to connect east to west will get 15 bonus points. You will score these end game conditions up here, which are worth 3 points apiece, which is barely anything. And then the game will be over. And then the number of buildings that you've put out here, telegraph stations are worth points. These houses are for extra resource generation, but at the end of the game, you count the total number of these that you've built out onto the map, and for each number that you have total, you will earn extra points. So I've really got some issues with this game. It is visually a disaster. It is sad to me how bad this game looks, how atrocious the rulebook is, how difficult it was to actually learn this game. As you saw, it is not that difficult of a game in a lot of ways. It has some really neat mechanisms. I like the idea of the worker placement adjacency. I like that you can boost up the power of different actions if you are around it. There's a few little extra things in there too that I think are kind of cool. Like if a spot is blocked off from you, all the spots around it by opponents, you can go right onto the place and then you send back the opponents. That's kind of interesting, but I feel like it only exists because of the place a worker or take a worker turn, and so spots can get blocked off. So it feels like there's kind of some inelegant solutions to problems that maybe needed to be ironed out and kinked out a little bit more. I think this is going to be a key part of my review, is that this game feels like it's not fully baked yet. It needs to go back in the oven. It wasn't fully developed. A game designer comes up with the idea, makes, play tests it, and then pitches it to a publisher, and a publisher is going to do some development on it and has to make the visual and the aesthetic and the theme all work together, and none of those things do in this game. I see what looks like a fun game in here. I like mechanisms like with that lobby Congress action where you bump the hats down and you get little bonuses, and then at some point some player is going to reset them. We've seen that in very few other games, but the games that do that, I really love that in. This game has things that I should like, but the complete package is not good. I can't emphasize that this is not a good package in terms of the art. Looks like reject Super Nintendo backgrounds for world maps and Final Fantasy games. The theming doesn't really make sense. I don't understand. Competitive companies trying to build the Transcontinental Railroad, and you can kind of benefit off of other players, but you really don't want to. The scoring is complicated. The game rulebook has 4 pages dedicated to scoring, how to lay out the tiles and the tracks and stuff, because it's not intuitive and it's not smooth. It's, once again, these creases that should have been ironed out. It does have large picture diagrams to show how the scoring works, which is good. If you're going to have complicated scoring, show examples, show pictures, give really important details like that. But in a 40 to 60 minute game, just make it easier, just make it smoother or something. I did not feel like the points were really an important, or they were important, but I didn't really feel like I could understand why things were worth the amount of points they were. Those little end game tiles, the 4 of them, are worth 3 points each, which is fairly inconsequential, I feel like. There's so many things that needed to have been worked out better. Graphically, the train tracks do not matter. This was a really difficult thing for me to grasp reading through the rulebook. The train tracks don't matter. There's straight tiles, there's curved tiles, there's 4-way crossroads, and there's 3-way T intersections. None of that matters. Anything adjacent to any tile you put out is connected. The rulebook actually shows an example where a straight track turns into a curve and it says the city north of here is connected to this. It is mind-boggling, the decisions that the company made when they printed this. The rulebook is one of the worst that I've ever had to read, and that's really saying something. It explains that action spaces, the bonus is multiplied, in quotes, multiplied, and then for 12 pages does not explain what that means until the very end. And even then, it's not a smooth multiplication. It's more of like an additive bonus if you have more workers around. If you get your workers kicked off of the board, you get a cowboy hat. And the cowboy hat is really cool. Some of the little miniatures are really cool. The top hat's really cool. There's like some aspects of really great production and pieces. But you can spend a cowboy hat to multiply your action, and it just feels so weird. And why is that a rule that has to be in the game? There's so many things that I just think, put it back in the oven. I cannot recommend this game. I did not have fun with it. It was clunky. It was difficult to learn. It was aberrant to look at. I abhorred the entire experience. I cannot recommend at all this game. It looked kind of interesting. I like the cover. I like the idea of a fun little worker placement game with trains and stuff, but it felt like nothing. It felt counterintuitive to its theming. It didn't feel like a Yellow game. I know Yellow kind of is maybe distributing or co-publishing this one, and I thought, this is weird for Yellow Games, who usually makes at least decent, if not good, rule books consistently. I don't understand what happened here. So I'm going to justify my end scoring here in my review. Normally for a game like this that had clunky rules that I thought wasn't as fun as it could have been, that little Senate track or the Congress thing wasn't as punchy, and the engine built way too fast. You went from having only 6 resource spaces, and when you got those little extra trains, you could store 3 extra on each. And you go from like 0 to 60 in like 4 rounds in the game. Your engine really starts firing off to the point where you have so many resources, and you say, what do I do with these now? I'm going to take this action and get 6 iron. I don't really need 6 iron. I'm going to get 7 powder kegs, right? You just get so much, and you just feel like, right? A lot of engine building games, people complain that the ramp up is cut off right before you peak. This is the opposite problem. You peak pretty quickly, and then you keep playing for a while, and it's flatlined, and it's not as fun as it could be. So, normally a game like that I would give like a 5 maybe, but you marry that with the atrocious rulebook, the graphic design and the art and the inelegancies, everything about this that you look at and say, no, this shouldn't have been made. You should not have hit print on this yet. I would give all those aspects like a 1. So I'm gonna kind of squish that together. I'm giving this game a 3. Do not recommend. I don't know who the audience is for this. I don't know how many people would enjoy this. I think there will be some, but I think almost universally, all of those people will have to be taught the game from someone that already, trudged through the rulebook, because it was not an intuitive or easy process. So, 3 out of 10 from me for Pacific Rails Inc. A big disappointment, unfortunately. This is a first-time designer. I think that there is, like I said, an interesting game, lots of interesting mechanisms underneath this, and so I feel bad that there wasn't enough love and attention put into it on that development side of things. I will look forward to see maybe what else this designer comes out with in the future, but this is not a good product, and I'm sorry about that, but that's how it is. So anyway, thank you for coming by the Dice Tower. My name is Chris, and you have a great day.